Right, so this video is for year 2 of AQA Economics. It's looking at a 25 mark question. Now obviously you're going to do a lot of 25 markers within that final year and within the exams. You've got obviously paper 1, paper 2, paper 3. And in paper 1 and paper 2, you're going to do at least 2 25 markers in each paper. And they range from section A and B to section C. And there is a bit of a difference. Obviously, paper 1, you've got your micro. This video is going to be based on paper 2, which is macro. And you've got your paper 3, which is obviously your synopsis paper. Now, with section A and B, you've got the case study. For section C, you might have a snippet of information, but there's no case study. So you're meant to bring in a lot of your own knowledge to answer that question. With paper 3, there's probably a bigger case study with lots more quantitative data that could help. So there's definitely differences, but what I'm going to do within this video is just give you kind of a general technique and looking at what the examiners have said, based mostly on paper 2. So just to start off with, let's have a look at the examiners' reports and some of the points that the examiners have said in the past. So to begin with, let's have a look at probably the most costly mistake you could make, which is misinterpreting the question. I've told my classes this many times before. An example of a student who got 0 out of 25 because they misinterpreted the question. And at the time, very, very able students, we recalled the paper because we were so shocked at the score, and we saw exactly what the student did. And what was interesting is when you read the examiner's reports, it wasn't a one-off. There was a lot of students, it seemed, who also got 0 out of 25. And this point here, this is based on 2 years where students made this same mistake in terms of misinterpreting the 25 marker. So it says examples include, and this was the one that the students who I knew, the mistake that they had made was mixed up a budget surplus with a balance of payment surplus. But then there was another year where they mixed up a single market with a currency union. And in both cases, the examiner's report said there was a lot of students who literally had 0 marks, and that can be definitely the difference between grades. So make sure that you understand exactly what the question's asking, and I'll go through a technique that you could use later on that. Right, less successful responses again, they kind of forgot what the question was asking. And I know the 25 marker, you'll be writing pages and pages, and it's easily sometimes to kind of go off on a tangent, and you have to at certain points just stop and just think, okay, what is the question asking? And let's make sure, am I linking back to what the question's asking? I don't want to waffle, I don't want to go off on a tangent, I want to make sure that I'm addressing exactly what the question's asking. And that's why the advice that I would give, one of the biggest mistakes you could do is read that question and put pen to paper straight away. You need a plan, you need to consider what the structure is. I know some of you are a bit worried about time management, but whilst you're reading the case study, you could be naturally and automatically creating a plan. And again, I'll go through that a little bit later on as well. Right. So many candidates decide to go for the first context. However, many never fully got to grips with the 25 mark question. So let me just kind of break that down. What sometimes students do is they'll read the first couple of questions and they'll be like, oh, I like the sound of this extract. They'll see the calculation question. They might see the 9 marker and they might just breeze over the 25 marker. But you have to remember, in year 2, and you're looking at section A and B, the 25 marker is the majority of your marks. So that should be the question that you fully acknowledge in terms of which extract you are going to choose. What my advice would be is look at the 25 marker first. Try to break down the 25 marker. Could I answer that? Am I confident with it? Read the case study and then look at the rest of the questions. So, because obviously this examiner's report said that they picked the wrong extract. They picked the one that actually, when they got to the 25 marker, they were not comfortable with. Right, okay, other points. So the best answers made use of the data in the context and weighed up the costs and benefits of both the short run and the long run. Now, I'm going to talk about context on some of the other points, so I'm going to kind of leave that. But I think when we're looking at evaluation, I think one of the key points that you could look at is whether, are we considering the short term, but shall we also consider the long run? Because in the short run it could be beneficial, but in the long run it might actually be detrimental and vice versa. So that helps to kind of evaluate the situation as well. So remember to look at time scale. Now, in a 25 mark question where students are asked to demonstrate their AO4 skills, many are successfully evaluating the situation presented. However, less effective answers are somewhat rehearsed or superficial. So what I mean by that, and what the examiner means by that, is sometimes, and this can happen a lot with, for example, essay planning and planning documents. You kind of create the perfect evaluation for any question based on a topic, but the issue with that is it's not specific to the given situation. It's not contextual, and you need to make sure that you are in a situation that you fully understand what the case study is giving you. You fully understand what the situation which has been provided to you is, and you can evaluate based on that. So you cannot rehearse. You cannot use the same evaluation to some of the 25 markers you've done on previous topics, on previous essays, which was on a very, very similar topic, because the case study is not going to be similar. It's going to be different, and it has to be based on that case study. It's economics is one of those subjects where it's ever changing. There's so many different topics. There's so many different situations, and I think this is really important for Section C. Students who are well read, they read up on what's going on, they understand what's happening in the economy, they've got good examples of economic situations and how it applies to certain concepts. They're the ones that do pick up the higher application marks, especially in Section C. So make sure that you do have good examples. Make sure that you are aware of how the government has responded to different economic situations, whether that was the Great Depression, whether that was the Great Recession. And make sure that you can use them, not to storytell, we don't want storytelling, but to evidence and support the analysis and the evaluation that you are making. Right, okay, other points. Despite being given several steers in the extracts, many students failed to fully understand the given situation and they didn't take on board the context. The case study is your best friend in this situation. They will give you so many clues. They'll give you so much direction. With some of these concepts, there's so many points that you could be making, but it doesn't mean that you should be making them. You can't be having 6-7 points for one argument. What you need to do is you need to read the case study, and they will guide you. They will direct you in the points that you should be making. Because remember, the mark schemes will be based on those points from the case study. All right, so make sure that you do consider the case study and make sure that you are using the points. If you read your answer back and it's quite generic and it can be about any economic circumstance, any economic situation, and you haven't really used the case study, then obviously you're limiting your marks. Stronger students use the data, so it's not just qualitative data, but it's quantitative. I think when I've looked at some of my classes, they're very, very good at using the qualitative information in the 25 markers, and sometimes the question that we're going to look at in this video, it directs you to extract B, and I think sometimes students take that to literally, I suppose, they're thinking, okay, well, I have to use extract B, but I can only use extract B. No, use all the extracts. Use extract A, use extract C. Extract A usually has quite a lot of figures with regards to quantitative data. You can use that. That's not just based on the first couple of questions. You can use that for all the questions if it's appropriate. So yes, when it does direct you to an extract, that probably will have the most amount of information, but there might be information in the other extracts as well. Right, stronger students also considered solutions. So what I mean by that is when you get to your overall evaluation, when you make your decision, when you decide, for example, the policy that you're going to pick, or whether it's effective or not, or whether it's harmful or not, whatever the question might be, your decision, unfortunately, it's not going to be the perfect decision because there is no perfect decision in economics. What you need to do is you need to argue your case. Yes, you need to provide weight to your judgment, but you also have to acknowledge it might not always be the case. And actually, there might be limitations to your decision. And if there's limitations to your decision, well, how can you resolve it? And that's where solutions come in. And that's where you get your really high level evaluation marks. Right, okay, so when we're looking at the mark scheme, we're focused on level 5, okay, we're aspiring for that level 5 between 21 and 25 marks, but actually the difference between level 5 and 4, or 4 and 5, sorry, it's not that much, okay, so for example, it says good use of data, it says includes well-focused analysis with clear logical chains of reason. It says includes supported evaluation throughout the responses and in a final conclusion. Well, if you read level 4, what it'll say is, instead of maybe well-focused analysis, it'll say includes some well-focused analysis. Instead of saying, for example, includes supported evaluation, it'll say includes some reasonable supported evaluation. And I suppose the big difference being is you need to just make sure you're consistent throughout your whole 25 marker. So your argument 1, your argument 2, your evaluation, it's all consistent with the skills that are required in level 5. Right, okay, so to begin with, 25 marker, you should know this, but the instruction, the command word, it's always going to be whether it could be assess, it could be evaluate, it could be justify, but you require an evaluation. Now, you should be evaluating throughout. It shouldn't just be in your overall evaluation, okay? Every point that you make, point 1, you should evaluate that point. Point 2, you should evaluate that point, and then you should have your overall decision. Some students, especially in section C, where maybe they're starting to run out of time, you may get to a point where if you just leave it all to the end and you do run out of time, and this is worst case scenario, then you might not have much evaluation at all, and you're going to limit your marks again. So by evaluating throughout, the examiner is going to look, and he or she is going to be like, yep, there you go. AO4 marks, straight away, evaluation, give it a tick. And that could be in the very first argument. The context, it tells you extract B, but again, don't just look at extract B, look at the others. Extract B will have the majority of the information, but the other extract A and extract C might also. And it's saying UK economy, so you have to focus on the UK economy in this question. Other questions, it might be based on other economies, or it might be a developed economy or a developing, but make sure you just look at that, because that again, that could be absolutely decisive as to what level you might get and how you might be limited by not interpreting the question. The focus, it's saying current account. So again, current account, not budget. Okay, current account. So we'll look at the balance of payments, and we're looking at also the macroeconomic performances. So the macroeconomic objectives of the UK government. Right. Okay. So I'm going to just quickly break this question down. What I think the question is asking is, first of all, is the current account deficit a problem or is it not? So how I'm going to structure this essay is straight away I'm going to say, yes, it is a problem. All right, so the current account deficit is a problem, and it's a problem for the macroeconomic performance because of. Then my balance, I'm going to create some balance. I'm going to have an alternative argument, and I'm going to say, well, actually, no, it's not a problem. And the reason why it's not a problem is because. And then finally, I'm going to have a weighted judgment. All right, so my technique. First of all, my argument 1. What is my main point? What is my main argument? What you need to make sure you do is you assume the examiner knows absolutely nothing. Okay, they've never studied economics before, they have no idea about anything, and you are going to fill in the blanks. So as it says here, assume the examiner has no knowledge and you are spelling it out to them. So if you give an argument and you give a point and you say, that is my point, well, why is that a valid point? Why is that a point at all? How does this even link to what the question is asking? Once you've done that, then you can start bringing in your chains of analysis, and you can start to develop, and you need those development strands. Now, again, I do not want, or you do not want, the examiner asking the questions why after a point. The next sentence should fill in that blank. If it doesn't, then it's an incomplete chain of arguments. And you need to evidence it. And you need to evidence it with theory, and you need to evidence it with the case study and the application from the case study, or as well, possibly your own knowledge as well. So remember, the case study gives you a lot of clues, and the case study gives you a lot of evidence. So make sure you use the case study. But you also have to make sure that your arguments are technical and they have that theory to back it up. And that could, and you probably will include a diagram, and make sure the diagram is not floating. And what I mean by that is actually embedded into your analysis. It creates a new layer of analysis, and that's why you should be using it, because the diagram will help with that theory. Right, when you finish that chain of arguments, then you've got to a point where you can start evaluating. And what you're going to do is you're going to think about, okay, the point that I've just made, what does it depend upon? Will it always be the case? I've given a reason as to why, but will that always happen? Does it not depend on the situation? Is there any limitations to this point? And it's this point, it's not other points, it's the point that you've just made. And will always be the case, as I've said before, and that will be the start of your evaluation. Now, for your other argument, just follow the same structure, the exact same structure, but based on that argument. So that's your second argument. All right. So again, what is that argument? What is that point? Why is that a valid point? What's the development strands in terms of evidence and theory? What does it depend upon? And the one thing that I would say is try to keep their arguments separate, okay? Do not try to compare them. Do not try to intertwine them, not at this moment in time. Because what you'll end up doing is you'll end up in a situation that when you get to your main evaluation, you'll be thinking, well, what can I write now because I've already done it? And actually, what that might have meant is that you've limited what analysis you could have made previously. So you're in a point where you've got a balanced argument and now you're ready to make your judgment. Make it clear. You have to remember the examiner is marking hundreds of scripts, so just make their job easy, okay? And say in judgment to the question and give them your decision, all right? And once you've done that, you need to make sure that you've added weight. So if you've got, for example, argument A and you've got argument B, well, based on the situation that you've been provided with, which argument is the most important to that given situation? So it's not about what you think is the best argument, it's what you think is the best argument for the situation that has been provided in the case study. So this weighted judgment is where you start to compare or contrast, okay? Now, one of the biggest mistakes that I notice in evaluation is students just simply repeating what they've already said. You don't want the examiner doesn't want to read it twice. Okay, there's no repetition. Place weight. And once you've done that, remember what the examiner report said. The stronger students offer a solution, and what they said was, okay, this is my decision, but it's not a perfect decision. And as I said before in economics, you don't get a perfect decision. There are issues, there are limitations, but this is a potential recommendation. This is a solution. This could resolve it. And again, that would get you the maximum marks. So, all right, so what we've got this 25 marker, and what I've done is I've had a look at the case study. There's extract A. Straight away, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, okay, what do I see what's important here? Well, first of all, I can see that there's been the pound has depreciated throughout the whole time, especially at that point there where we're looking with regards to it being at its weakest point. At that point, we've also got the current account, which is getting worse. Okay, so I'm thinking here, okay, the pound's depreciating and the current account is getting worse. Well, that might give me an analytical argument or maybe an evaluative point that I could use. So I'll probably, whilst I'm reading this information, I'm going to annotate it. I'm going to do a quick plan as I'm obviously reading it. Then what I've got extract B, which they've recommended. And to be honest, I'm reading extract B and I'm thinking paragraph 1, yeah, probably could use all of it. Paragraph 2, yep, probably use that as well. Paragraph 3, yep, it's all very, very important. Paragraph 4, again, I have to admit that the whole section is so crucial. I do want to use it all, but I don't want to force it in my answer. So again, I need to plan it. Which points does it relate to, and how could I use it? Then I get to section C, and I'm thinking, okay, could I use extract C? The question doesn't direct me towards it, but there might be something useful. And straight away I see this bit, and I'm thinking, actually, we even though it's the UK economy, we could look at Germany, because Germany has a completely different situation to the UK with regards to a current account. They've got a current account surplus, whilst the UK has a current account deficit. So yeah, maybe we could offer a bit of a comparison. So what I've got is I've started to break down some of my points. I've started to annotate it. Again, I don't know if I'm going to use them yet, but at least I've got a plan. And as soon as I've got that plan, it makes it so much easier to write my 25 marker. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you what my 25 marker is. Again, you can always pause the video and read the case studies. You can pause the video and read the 25 markers. I will put it in the comments as well. I won't obviously be able to put the diagram in, but you've got the model answer if you want to obviously look at it and look at the technique. So, all right, what I'll do is I'll remove myself from the screen and I'll just put the model answer on. So here we go. Feel free to mute me if you just want to read in peace, but one reason why the current account deficit could be an issue is that it might indicate a lack of global competitiveness, possibly due to poor productivity. Germany view their current account as economic success, showing that their goods are in high demand globally and are outcompeting other countries. By having an absolute advantage over countries such as the UK, it allows for derived demand, increasing employment in Germany, especially in the export sector. Yet, this also means that the UK is struggling to compete, which could put their export sector at risk. If UK manufacturers not only struggle to export due to other countries' customers buying goods from Germany instead, but also see domestic demand falling due to them switching to German products, it will cause average revenue to fall. And if below their average total variable cost, then shutdown will take place, leading to structural unemployment. However, as the UK has moved further and further into the tertiary and quaternary sectors, with a strong performance in trading services at 8 billion surplus, it may suggest that the UK are not overly worried about competing in these sectors, especially if the imports are driving consumption, and then there will be derived demand in sectors such as retail, which will help the UK employment. And I'm going to delve into that argument now. So one reason as to why the current account deficit isn't problematic is due to the reason for the reliance on the imports. The UK is experiencing positive growth. In quarter 3 2016, the UK grew much faster than economists predicted, and this was due to rising consumption. As consumption is the greatest contributor towards UK GDP, this suggests that the increase in imports could be to fuel the rise in consumption. If UK firms are importing inputs to help manufacture goods to sell due to this increased domestic demand, then imports are actually contributing towards growing AD, as the diagram below shows. So, as even though the trade deficit is 4.8 billion in November 2016, if consumption resulted in a much greater positive amount, then AD1 would still shift to AD2, showing an increase in national output. So again, from Y1 to Y2. Ultimately, it could be argued that if we saw a fall in imports, then it could be due to reasons such as a slowdown in the UK economy with falling consumption, which would be more worrying for UK macroeconomic performance. However, and again the evaluation, this reliance on imports could still be problematic, especially if there were further fluctuations in the exchange rate. So again, I'm going back to extract A now. So as this depends upon the cost of imports remaining stable, as otherwise the UK economy could experience cost-push inflation, resulting in lower consumer confidence. From November 2015 to November 2016, the pound has depreciated by 20.43%, yet the current account deficit is 4.8 billion, suggesting how inelastic demand for imports are. So therefore, if it did result in cost-push inflation, it may hurt standard of living for those whose wage doesn't go up in real terms. So, my final evaluation now. So, in judgment to the question, I do not believe the current account deficit is currently a problem for UK macroeconomic performance. As mentioned previously, consumption remains the biggest contributor towards GDP, and as long as GDP continues to grow, then so should employment. Furthermore, as stated by an economist at Scotiabank, there is hope that exports will start to rise due to the value of the pound, helping to reduce this trade deficit in a self-correcting manner. In addition, if there is a current account deficit, it must mean there is a financial and capital account surplus for a balance of payment. And as UK continues to be an attractive location for FDI, especially due to increasing consumption levels and other reasons such as advanced infrastructure, world-class universities and the English-speaking language, then this continued to flow into the country, helping to fund the deficit. Moreover, if this FDI helps to improve UK's factor of production, such as capital, then it may help to offset the concerns over productivity. So I'm linking it back to my issue with point 1. But there's limitations. It's not the perfect answer. So, however, if Scotiabank's predictions do not come true, then this could be something to worry about in the short run. So, remember what the examiner report said about short run, long run. So, it's not currently self-correcting. As we can see from extract A, figure 1 shows a depreciation of 20.4% from the end of 2015 to November 2016. However, in the same month, the current account deficit has seen one of its sharpest declines. This suggests that UK imports and exports, as a combined PED total, is inelastic, showing a low responsiveness of foreign customers to switch to UK goods, or UK customers switching to domestic substitutes, which might be a sign of productivity worries as mentioned before. So again, I've put it in the comments. Feel free to pause, feel free to rewind and read it again, but that would get you your level 5 marks.